Clara Beaumont stared at the moss-green river, smeared with sunset through the promenade rail of the SS Jubilee Queen. Her reflection, white curls, half-moon glasses, and an arthritic shoulder that still tingled where throwing knives had once grazed it, wavered among the ripples. She told herself she was here for the music, for the 7-day jazz cruise that meandered south from St. Louis to New Orleans. Yet each brassy horn phrase climbing from the main deck reminded her of another life, a life spent just off stage, catching doves in silk pockets and vanishing crates behind curtains. She had been the great Lorien's assistant for 31 years, until his heart quit during the second half of a levitation act. The applause that night had felt like shrapnel. Clara abandoned the spotlights, bought a modest bungalow in Mobile, and promised never again to involve herself with disappearing objects, human or otherwise. Now, a decade later, she found that promise dissolving like sugar in iced tea. "Miss Beaumont!" The call came from Fletcher Duval, producer of the cruise's headline act, the Red Feather Jazz Revue. He was small, ferret-quick, with a pencil mustache that seemed drawn on moments earlier. He waved from outside the ship's exhibition salon, a room repurposed from gambling days, its roulette wheels serving as backdrop for tasteful displays of New Orleans jazz artifacts. Tonight's main attraction, at least until 5 minutes ago, had been the Duval family heirloom top hat. Not just any topper, either. The black silk stovepipe worn by Fletcher's great-grandfather, Cornelius Cornet Neal Duval, first cornetist of the fabled Storyville Brass Kings. Legends claimed the hat was present at the invention of jazz itself, and that Cornet Neal had tucked the first written blues progression beneath its sweatband. It was insured for $500,000, but among New Orleans musicians it was priceless, a relic of beginnings. Clara followed Fletcher into the salon. Glass cases lined the walls. Polished trumpets, faded photographs, and handwritten posters stared back. In the center sat a cylindrical pedestal topped by a velvet pillow, empty. "I locked the salon at 6, Fletcher said, voice quivering. "We reopened at 8 for the welcome reception, and—" He spread his hands toward the naked pillow. A cluster of passengers hovered nearby. Captain Eloise Merriweather, silver-haired and square-jawed, still in white uniform. Lionel Brink, 40-ish, barrel-bodied drummer for the Red Feather, wiping fingers on a napkin. Simone Dorsey, clarinetist and rising star, dressed in sequins that caught every lamplight. Horace Klepp, travel blogger in neon sneakers, live-stream equipment slung around his neck. Birch and Daisy Tolliver, an elderly couple whose love of jazz was surpassed only by their love of cocktails. The captain cleared her throat. "We've contacted our onboard security, but I requested Miss Beaumont's assistance." "With apologies, Miss Clara. Fletcher tells me you used to dabble?" Clara shot Fletcher a look. He shrugged. Either he'd recognized her name from vaudeville flyers or from late-night magician documentaries. Once more, her past refused to stay, vanished. "All right," Clara said, feeling the familiar click of analytical gears she'd tried to rust shut. "First question, who besides Mr. Duval possessed keys?" "Only me and Security Chief Alvarez," Captain Merriweather replied. "Alvarez and officers are canvassing the crew right now." "Any sign of forced entry?" "None." The pedestal lay 8 feet from the nearest wall. The thief would have needed to cross open floor. Yet the salon's ceiling boasted a catwalk once used to drop stage props. Clara's shoulder throbbed with the ghost of old rigging knots. Simone Dorsey leaned in. "We start our first set in an hour. My clarinet solo loses flavour without that hat spotlighted behind me. Can you, speed solve? Her impatience caused Fletcher to bristle. This is family history, not a stage bauble. Simone rolled her eyes and flounced away. Lionel followed, muttering about sheet music revisions. Clara asked Fletcher for the hat's travel case. He produced a custom box, burgundy leather, monogrammed CND. Inside, a foam ring shaped to cradle a cylinder, now empty. She sniffed, faint cigar smoke and lavender polish. Old stagehands used lavender to mask sulphur from flash paper. Interesting. Mr. Duval, Clara said quietly. A hat that old. Does it have a sweatband compartment? He nodded. Yes, a satin pocket under the liner. I keep Cornet Neal's original cornet mouthpiece in there. Real silver. Clara filed that away. A thief might reach for metal quicker than for silk. She dismissed the gathering. I'll want to interview everyone later. For now, nobody leave the boat. Which was, of course, impossible until they reached Vicksburg in the morning, but it sounded authoritative. Back in her cabin, Clara spread a sketch of the salon downloaded from the brochure onto her bunk. The only oddity, ventilation grate above the pedestal. Too narrow for a hat, but an agile hand could lower a wire loop. Yet wires leave scuffs on velvet. She'd seen none. She visited crew corridors, shoulder-brushing life vest racks, until she found Chief Alvarez, a stocky man furrowing through manifest logs. Nobody unaccounted for among passengers or staff, he said. Video coverage. The salon camera had been temporarily offline during the 2-hour closure because a stagehand borrowed its memory card to film rehearsal. How convenient, Clara thought, thanking him. She prowled the upper deck where Simone practiced scales near the paddle wheel's churn. Rough night, Clara began. Mind answering a few? Simone shrugged. Shoot. Your costume tonight, sleeveless, but just now you're wearing a feather-trim shawl. Hide scrapes or rope burns? Simone laughed, shook her head, showed unblemished arms. I spent the last 2 hours with the horn section in the Chartreuse Lounge. Lots of witnesses, and cell phone videos if you doubt it. Likely true. The horn boys worshipped her. Lionel the drummer occupied a deck chair farther aft, bourbon sweating on his lip. He admitted sneaking into the salon at 6:30 to admire the hat. Cornet Neal's rhythms influenced my great-uncle, but swore he left everything untouched. Clara noted the time. The salon was supposedly locked then. Did Lionel have his own key? He insisted the door was ajar. I figured Fletcher or someone was setting up. He shrugged. I peeked and split. Back in the exhibition room, Clara inspected the lock. A modern numeric keypad. No scratch marks, but fingerprints smeared the shiny bezel. She borrowed Alvarez's kit, lifted a powder dark print, and asked for Lionel's index. Match. So Lionel had indeed opened the door. But had he re-locked it? A new trumpet blast called passengers to dinner, and Clara smelled shrimp étouffée wafting from the galley. As feet shuttled by, Horace Klepp, the blogger, live-streamed component unboxing tutorials to his followers. Clara waved him down. Love your channel, she lied. Ever film inside the salon? He grinned. Of course, B-roll for my cruise vlog. Want to see? On his tablet, he replayed footage shot at 5:55 p.m., moments before Fletcher locked the doors. Frame. Clara herself in background, studying a photograph, unaware of being filmed. The hat sat proudly on its pillow. Horace panned away, then without cutting pointed the lens towards Simone, who drifted past the entrance at exactly 5:56 wearing a glittering green scarf. She paused, glanced inside, and continued. Keep that file ready, Clara said. A pattern coalesced, glimpses, timings, alibis. But something felt missing, an element of misdirection, the same misdirection she had helped the great Lorien engineer 100 times. She returned to her cabin and rummaged through the overnight bag she'd packed mostly with nostalgia, a deck of marked cards, a thumb tip, and one battered silk top hat, her own practice prop from old days, folded flat. She balanced it on her palm, remembering the illusion called the borrowed hat vanish. Lorien would borrow a gentleman's hat, place it on a pedestal, then clap his hands. An assistant in the fly gallery yanked a black cord, hoisting an identical hat filled with confetti into the rafters. The audience's gaze followed the rising decoy, so nobody watched Clara sweep the real hat into a trapdoor in the base. Trapdoor, pedestal. She hurried back to the salon, flashlight in hand, knelt beside the pedestal. Its velvet-draped cylinder rang hollow when tapped. She lifted the fabric, particle board top, modern screws. No secret compartments. Even so, the room's parquet floor seemed uneven near the pedestal's edge. She knelt farther, fingernails probing, click. A board lifted effortlessly. Beneath lay a narrow crawl space running under the wall toward the stage of the adjacent ballroom. Cruise ships often had hidden maintenance shafts, but this space looked newly dusted. Clara's pulse quickened, old stage adrenaline coursing. She aimed her light down the channel. A set of scuff marks led 2 yards to a hinged panel in the ballroom's floor. If someone had slipped the hat downward during the brief closing of the salon, they could pop up amid cymbals and sheet stands, stash the relic, and later retrieve it disguised as stage crew. She replaced the board and hurried to the ballroom. Rehearsal thrummed, trumpets, drums, double bass. She signaled Lionel, and they stepped behind the curtain. "Didn't take the hat," he snapped before she spoke. "I believe you," Clara said, "but you might have seen who did." He frowned. "I told you, the door was ajar." Then his eyes flicked sideways, guilt shading them. "Okay, truth. Fletcher left it open. We were planning a stunt, lights down, music swell. He'd make the hat vanish to hype the exhibit. I was helping rig sound cues, but he chickened out last minute. Yet the door stayed unlocked." Lionel nodded. "Supposed to lock on exit, but I missed." Clara exhaled. So the thief needn't pick a keypad. They had walked right in. At 20 minutes to showtime, Clara confronted Fletcher in his dressing cabin, where he paced among spare bow ties. "You staged vanishes?" she asked. "Marketing, that's all." Tears rimmed his eyelids. "But I scrapped it when Simone threatened to quit if we turned her set into a circus." "You realize your stunt set the table for a real theft." He punched the air softly. "My own fault. Can you get it back?" "That depends. Who knew about the plan?" "Lionel, Simone, the Tollivers. They're investors. And maybe Captain Merriweather." She had to clear safety. Clara thanked him and pivoted to the Tollivers' stateroom, knocking amid clarinet warbles echoing the corridor. Daisy Tolliver opened, cheeks pink from sherry. "Oh, Miss Beaumont, come taste our Pappy Van Winkle." Her husband waved an antique bourbon bottle. Clara spotted on their dresser a glossy travel brochure for Delacroix Auction House, circled prices on heritage memorabilia. She took a polite sip of bourbon, then asked casual questions about jazz history. Birch Tolliver's eyes sparkled as he recounted rare vinyl purchases and displayed an expensive watch engraved with "all that jazz." Collectors, yes. Thieves? Their shaky knees suggested they could barely bend to lace shoes, let alone crawl under floorboards. Still, moneyed collectors often hired younger talent. Back to square one, Clara mused as a horn signalled passengers to assemble. She retreated to her seat inside the ballroom. A hush fell, smoke machines hissed violet mist, and spotlights ignited the stage. Simone stepped forward, clarinet poised, wearing not the green scarf from Horace's video, but a tall black top hat, an obvious prop, new and shiny, meant to stand in tribute until the original returned. Or was it? Clara's breath stalled. This hat looked disarmingly authentic, slightly dulled silk, faint brim kink, just like the photographs. She recalled Fletcher's earlier description of a tiny moth hole on the left crown seam. She squinted. There it was. Simone was literally wearing the missing heirloom in front of 300 onlookers. But why flaunt it? Misdirection again. A magician once told Clara, "If you can't hide something, spotlight it." Simone launched into a blistering solo, reeds crying over the band. Between phrases, she kicked her heel in time, and each kick sent a little puff of dust from the brim's edge. Not dust, ashes. Burned fabric? Clara slipped from her seat, circled to stage right, motioned at Captain Merriweather, and pointed to the hat. The captain's brow knotted. During the next ensemble break, she strode on stage, whispering into Simone's ear. Simone masked surprise poorly. She removed the hat, bowed theatrically to the audience, and followed the captain backstage. There, Clara met them beneath a blue safety lamp. She seized the hat, tipped the satin liner, and out tumbled not a silver mouthpiece, but a rusted thimble and 3 dried river reeds, stuffing to keep shape. The sweatband pocket had been slit open. The mouthpiece was gone. "This isn't the heirloom," Clara said, turning the crown to reveal a concealed brand tag dated 2019. "A clever aging job with lamp-blackened tea. Where's the original, Simone?" "I swear I found this on the green room table 15 minutes ago," Simone protested. "I assumed Fletcher set it out as substitute." Captain Merriweather bristled. "Why would we replace the stolen hat with a fake?" "So critics won't write we lost it on day 1, Simone retorted. Clara believed her. The timing, the sloppy aging, Simone wasn't detail-minded enough. So who planted the decoy? Someone who wanted to shift gift shop gossip away from the theft itself, making passengers think the hat had never disappeared, only swapped for a stage replica. Clara noticed soot on Simone's fingers, matching the dust from the brim. "Where'd this soot come from?" she asked. Simone frowned. "Props room. There's an old footlight machine we used for fog test. I lifted it earlier. Guess it's filthy." Props room. Clara's heartbeat skipped, recalling that the maintenance crawlspace opened behind that very room. She dispatched Captain Merriweather to seal exits and dashed there herself. Inside, towers of crates formed dim canyons. Beside a coil of rope lay an open maintenance hatch. Clara lowered herself into the crawlspace. Her knees scraped metal ribs as she belly-crawled, flashlight slicing darkness. 10 feet in, a glint, silver against plywood. The cornet mouthpiece, wedged deliberately in crossbeams. She pocketed it. A further 10 feet, and the passage emerged at the salon's trapboard. Beside it rested a tough black shipping tube, the kind used for storing architectural plans. Lid unfastened. Using her phone's light, Clara peered inside and met the dull sheen of Cornet Neal's genuine top hat, brim carefully stuffed with tissue. Mystery solved. Almost. She still needed the culprit. The culprit, she now realized, had left the hat here because it was too bulky to whisk away immediately. But the tiny mouthpiece, worth maybe $5,000 alone, could be pocketed and smuggled off at the next port. Planting the fake hat on Simone, Redirected blame if anyone noticed weight missing from the case. Clever. Only someone who knew about the pocket's contents would target the mouthpiece first. Who besides Fletcher? Lionel, possibly the Tollivers, and Clara herself. She crawled back, popped into the props room, and froze. Horace Klepp stood there, neon sneakers glowing in the gloom, holding his camera pointed toward her. "Ms. Beaumont, this will make phenomenal content," he said. "Found your lost antique, I see," Clara replied coolly. "Fantastic. Let me get a close-up." He stepped forward, but Clara placed the mouthpiece and hat behind her on a canvas trunk. "How did you know to come here?" she asked. "You told me to keep my footage ready. I noticed you zoomed in on Simone's hat tonight. Figured the real one might surface backstage." "Funny," Clara said. "You live stream nearly everything, but your channel shows no video between 6 and 8 p.m., exactly when the theft occurred." Horace shrugged. Weak signal. Clara suddenly remembered lavender and cigar smoke lingering in the carrying case. Distinctive cheap floral cologne, the same scent Horace's t-shirt had wafted when he barreled by earlier. Had he been rooting in the case before the reception? She played her hunch. "Lavender's an interesting choice," she said, sniffing exaggeratedly. "My ex-partner used it on flash paper. Helps mask gunpowder." "You experiment with magic effects, Horace?" He flushed. "I dabble. My subscribers love tutorials." "Dabble enough to spot a hidden pocket in a sweatband?" His eyes darted, then steadied. "I don't know what you mean." Clara stepped sideways, revealing the shipping tube. "Cut the broadcast." He hesitated. She raised the mouthpiece. "1 month in jail will tank your ad revenue." He clicked the camera off. "How?" she asked softly. Horace exhaled. "Saw Duval practicing that cheesy vanish yesterday. I googled the hat, learned about the mouthpiece. Worth a fortune to collectors. When Lionel left the door open, I slipped in, lifted the hat, crawled through the old hatch, noticed it during a ship tour, stashed the hat, kept the mouthpiece. Easy. The fake hat was for optics. I'd age it more tomorrow." "And you'd disembark at Vicksburg, claim food poisoning, and vanish yourself," Clara finished. He shrugged. Footsteps approached. The captain, Alvarez, Fletcher. Clara passed them the evidence and released a long, tired breath. Later, after security escorted Horace to the brig, Fletcher arranged a private corner table for Clara and the recovered top hat, now under tempered glass. The band opened its second set. Simone's clarinet wove blue notes through evening breeze. Passengers danced, oblivious to the sleight of hand resolved just yards away. Fletcher raised a glass. "To Miss Clara Beaumont, saviour of jazz history." She clinked, cheeks warming. "I did promise never again to chase vanishing acts," she murmured. "But I suppose retirement is just another illusion." Lionel winked from the drum riser and tapped a rim shot. Daisy Tolliver laughed, swirling bourbon. Captain Merriweather offered Clara the honorary title of ship's consultant for strange occurrences. Clara accepted, surprising herself. When the final chord reverberated off the moonlit river, Clara strolled to the rail. The Mississippi whispered against the hull. She imagined the great Lorien nearby, applauding one last reveal. Clara Beaumont, assistant no more, had taken center stage. And for the first time, she allowed the applause to feel like healing rather than shrapnel.